Chapter 1146 Centipede King and Centipede Queen. After the people from the 5 major regions had arrived, the hosts, the people from the Shing Jing region, also arrived. Dragon's Roar General Shang Daowen accompanied a middle-aged man with white hair as he walked out from the back, and the crowd's gazes fell on him. It was then known that this was the commander of the first region, Qin Qigong. In the Earth God's temple, Guanlongnua was wearing a black nightgown, hugging her knees as she sat on the soft bed. Her long black hair hung down like a waterfall, and the projected video in front of her was the very people in the conference center at this moment. Every single person's appearance was clearly visible in front of her eyes. Shang Daowen introduced Qin Qigong and the people present, and then Qin Qigong sat down at the first place, while Shang Daowen was standing behind him with the appearance of a guard. The dinner party, tonight's reception for the representatives of the various regions, were all the most exquisite dishes, not to mention in the middle of the end times, even before the end times, it was food that ordinary people wouldn't even dare to think about. However, the crowd's minds were obviously not on the food. Everyone was more interested in knowing what was the reason Qin Qigong had summoned them here. As well as under the Qinling Mountain, what kind of secrets were hidden, and how much benefit they could get. After pushing cups and exchanging pleasantries, Han Shanzhua was the first to speak. Commander Qin, this time, we summoned us from the 6 regions here. What exactly are you going to let us do? So say something. Han Shanzhua had a big grin, but he saved others a lot of trouble. Zhang Yi and the others also couldn't help but look sideways at Qin Qigong in the center. Qin Qigong put down the wine glass in his hand before he slowly spoke. I'm sure you've all seen the yuan or fragments that we sent to the various regions, right? This was a newly discovered substance that is not among the known elements of the periodic table of elements. It contains a tremendous amount of energy, and a single piece is capable of releasing thousands of times the energy of an equal volume of oil. The Qinling Mountain was the dragon vein of Huashu Kingdom. Its underground is incomparably huge, and after the end of the world, we've even discovered a huge mystery from it. With our Shing Jing region alone, we can't even explore a tenth of it. Therefore, we intend to ask your 5 regions to join in the development of the Qinling Mountain range in the spirit of considering for the greater good of the nation. Sure enough. Zhang Yi cupped his wine glass in his hand and said darkly in his heart. This speech was similar to what he and Zhu Zheng and Deng Shintong had speculated. The Shing Jing region was forced to turn to other regions because it had encountered difficulties under the Qinling Mountain range. Zhang Yi listened silently and had no intention of opening his mouth. Li Changgong, however, raised a question at this moment. Shing Jing region's strength was the strongest in Huashu Kingdom. You guys have 3 epsilon-level mutants and your military strength far exceeds ours. If even you guys can't solve a difficult problem, how can we help? Besides, he suddenly smiled, what exactly is underneath the Qinling Mountain range? You haven't told us yet. Under the gazes of the crowd, Qin Qigong also answered their doubts. Everyone, please look. He reached out and pointed ahead, and a 3-dimensional projection suddenly unfolded right in front of the conference room. The light in the projection was very blurry, and it seemed to have been taken with special equipment and some kind of pitch-black environment. However, one could vaguely see 2 huge and hideous monsters. They were 2 huge centipede-shaped monsters. One was covered in black and the other was covered in blood red. Just through the video, one was able to feel its dreadfulness. Qin Qigong was looking at them, and was also wearing a grave expression. This image was transmitted back by the Jinyuanzi, the Jin guarding envoy that my Shing Jing region sent to Qinling Mountain. He encountered 2 epsilon-level monsters underneath the yuan ore. This kind of monster we call Earth Centipede. They are a male and a female, and they can dig through the hardest of earth and rocks underground, going 10,000 meters deep into the ground while moving freely. Not only that, their reproduction ability is also extremely amazing. According to our estimation, the Centipede Queen is capable of laying 1,000 Earth Centipede eggs every day. And it only takes less than a week for them to hatch, and by gnawing on yuan ore, they can grow to 5 meters long in 10 days. Li Changgong said slowly, they are the ones that caused the mining work in Shing Jing region to be forced to stop, right? Qin Qigong nodded. Jin Yuanzi alone couldn't deal with such a big trouble. After all, it was a battle in the depths of the underground caves, and these underground bugs had an inherent advantage. And for every day of downtime, we will face huge losses. Zhang Yi smiled and spoke up at this moment. The 3 epsilons of Shing Jing, they couldn't even solve them? Qin Shigong couldn't help but smile helplessly at these words. If Shing Jing were to give its full strength and attack the nests of these bugs, it might not be impossible to win. But then, Shing Jing would be locally empty. And doing so would be extremely risky. Han Shanzhua raised an eyebrow. I see, so you called us over to share the risk with you? Qin Shigong nodded. Not bad, exactly. The brightest of us can't afford the risk of attacking the crypt alone. But if several of us join forces, then not only would we be able to increase the probability of success of the operation, even if the mission fails, the risk would be easier to accept when shared. Of course, the risks and benefits were equal. If you guys are willing to participate in this operation, each of you will be able to get a 10% share of the yuan ore. Shang Daowen added at this time, currently, according to our detection, the reserves of yuan ore in Qinling Mountain are roughly equivalent to 200 billion tons of oil. As soon as these words came out, the expressions on the faces of those present all changed significantly. 200 billion tons of oil? Zhang Yi was also a bit dumbfounded. He even suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Had he heard wrong? However, in the communicator, Yang Xinxin's voice was heard. This reserve is very reasonable. The largest oil field that our country discovered in the northwest has a proven reserve of just 14 billion tons. And the discovery of yuan ore was tantamount to finding a giant oil field that's easier to extract and transport. Zhang Yi took a sip of the wine in his cup. 10%, that was 20 billion tons of oil energy. Even if it was divided in half to Jiangnan region, he could still get 10 billion tons of oil energy. Of course, the extraction cycle was a problem, but it was also equivalent to the fact that in the future, Zhang Yi would receive a constant supply of energy. This one would also completely solve the energy problem of Tianhai City. He did not move. Risks and rewards existed side by side, and people had told him bluntly that this business was not that easy to do. He looked towards the 2 huge and hideous earth centipedes amongst the projections. Commander Qin, how strong are these 2 monsters? Zhang Yi asked. Qin Shigong replied, the data we got considering the environmental effects of the underground was that the Centipede King had a supernatural ability index of 18,000 points and the Centipede Queen had a supernatural ability index of 16,000 points. Chapter 1147, Pressing on with every step. Hearing these words from Qin Shigong, the faces of the people at the scene couldn't help but become much more grave. This was because those 2 epsilon earth centipedes were indeed strong and difficult to deal with. It was no wonder that the Shing Jing region needed to borrow manpower from other regions to participate in this operation. However, Zhang Yi had some doubts in his mind, and he thought about it and did not say anything for the time being. After all, he wasn't good at this aspect of power tactics, and rashly saying anything inappropriate would only make him look ill-considered. And from the beginning to the end, Pa Jigsan as well as Jian Han did not speak. Strength, as well as status, they do not have the qualifications to speak at this time, they know very well in their own hearts. They were only here to listen, and then they had to go back and report back to the real head of the region, so that they could make up their minds. Qin Shigong raised the wine cup in his hand and said to the crowd with a sincere face, everyone, I hope you can consider this matter. If one is willing to participate in the operation, we are very welcome. But he turned his words around, his gaze sweeping over the crowd without a trace, especially when he passed by the representatives of the Southwest region and East Sea region, pausing slightly. What we need was epsilon-level battle power. If you do not intend to send your top forces to participate in this operation, then you will have to withdraw. The main trouble they were encountering was still that Earth centipede colony beneath the abyss. If they wanted to enter the depths of the Earth to resolve them and allow the mining of the yuan ore to continue, it was necessary for an epsilon-level powerhouse to go down there. Even if there were more others, I'm afraid that they could only serve food when they entered the Earth centipede's territory. A thoughtful look passed through Jiang Han's eyes, still not saying a word. But for this operation, it was clear that the East Sea region would not be able to participate. She had yet to break through to Epsilon, and Black Tortoise was unlikely to leave the sea, so this operation could only be called off. And Pa Jigsaw stroked the beard on his chin with a smiling expression, unable to see what he was thinking. Besides, he wasn't the one who really took the idea, but the four great family federations of the Southwest region. Zhang Yi, Li Changgong, and Han Shanzhua all wore thoughtful expressions, and it was clear that they were all weighing the pros and cons. It was at this time that Zhang Yi asked his question. For this operation, how many forces will your Shing Jing region deploy? Qin Qigong glanced at Zhang Yi and said with a smile, the Ghost Valley Jin Yuanzi, from the Qinling Mountain, as well as a dozen Dragon's Roar guards with an ability index of 9,300 points or more. As soon as these words came out, Zhang Yi, Li Changgong, Jiang Han and the others all stared at each other in disbelief. The Shing Jing region was so big, casually mentioning a dozen or so strong people that could be used as captains and fleet captains level in other regions. If one were to calculate it that way, the Shing Jing region's true depth would have to be unknowably terrifying. Zhang Yi said in his heart, was this the rich reward that came from enjoying a mysterious region alone? Terrifying, it was really too terrifying. Recalling back to the time when they were on Star Island, the appearance of the Source of God in Misty Valley did bring them a huge harvest as well. They had only searched around the periphery of the Misty Valley and had found a large number of source elves that contained powerful energies. And Shing Jing didn't know how many good things they had acquired from the mysterious area under the Qinling mountain range in the nearly 1 year that they had mastered it. Han Shanzhua rubbed his thick fingers and raised his eyes to look at Qin Qigong and Shang Daowen. You said that you would share 10% of the resources of the Qinling mountain with us, was that true? The smile on Qin Qigong's face deepened. Shang Daowen held up his glasses and said quietly, the resources we are talking about was simply the yuan or unearthed under the Qinling mountain range. In other words, what they had found under the Qinling mountain range was more than just yuan Oregon. There were also things that were not known to outsiders. The eyes of the people present shifted, all harboring their own thoughts in their hearts. Ahem, Qin Qigong cleared his throat, everyone, there's no rush, we'll eat first. You guys can go back and discuss slowly, and give me a reply when you have an idea. But I hope you guys can give me a reply within 3 days. After all, we can't afford to wait too long, and any day that the yuan or stops digging will cost us a great deal of money. He took a sip of the aged wine and said indifferently, actually, it's not that our Shing Jing region is incapable of solving this problem, we just want to avoid some risks. Just 1 or 2 helpers should be enough as well. The meaning expressed in these words was obvious. You 5 regions think about it yourselves, excluding the East Sea region whose conditions prevented them from making a move, there are 4 other regions that have Epsilon. But if you come late, it's not like you're the only ones who can't do it, so maybe this opportunity will disappear. And that 10% of yuan or can have nothing to do with you guys. The eyes of the crowd looking at each other changed again. But just at this time, Li Changgong suddenly put down the wine cup in his hand. I can promise that the Northwest region will participate in this operation. Li Changgong's sudden opening disrupted many people's plans. Originally, everyone was wanting to reconsider and wait and see the situation. Who would have thought that he would be so dry? Qin Qigong was also looking at Li Changgong with a smile on his face. Gochin deserves to be from a military family. Acting decisively, one cannot help but feel that there are talents in the rivers and mountains, and that there is a new generation of newcomers. Qin Qigong's words were meaningful. He and Li Changgong were both region commanders, yet he didn't address Li Changgong as commanderly, and with the words that followed, it was also clear that he was referring to Li Changgong's reliance on force to seize power and rise to the top. But Li Changgong couldn't refute this. After all, no matter from the status or resume, he was far worse than Qin Qigong, the veteran commander-in-chief. Li Changgong's eyes were a little gloomy as he clenched the wine glass in his hand and said in a deep voice, but let me participate in this operation, I have a condition. Qin Qigong's gaze sank slightly, and Zhang Yi also raised his head, his expression calm as he looked at Li Changgong. Li Changgong really looked at Zhang Yi, his sharp gaze seemed like two swords, piercing Zhang Yi's face. My grudge with chaos must be settled first. Otherwise, neither I nor he will be able to trust our backs to each other with confidence, I'm sure. I hope that the Shing Jing region can preside and allow me to fight a fair battle with chaos. I, Li Changgong, can guarantee with the honor of a soldier that I won't take his life. This one was a battle of honor, point blank. If Commander Qin can agree to this request, or at least not interfere in the battle between us, I will agree to participate in this action. Zhang Yi's eyes gradually became sharp. Li Changgong, it was time to come after all. He wouldn't let go of any opportunity after all, wanting to step on Zhang Yi and sit on his seat as the Northwest King. Chapter 1148 I'm going to bet my life with you. In an instant, the gazes of everyone present landed on Zhang Yi and Li Changgong. Qin Shigong and Shang Daowen stared, not knowing what they were pondering. As the hosts, they were certainly unwilling to see the representatives of the Northwest region and Jiangnan region fight. However, nowadays, they did need to get Li Changgong's support. Qin Shigong slowly spoke, in this matter, I respect the opinion of His Excellency Chaos, of Jiangnan region. As long as he doesn't nod his head, no one can be in Shing Jing and force him to do what he doesn't want to do. Qin Shigong's words did not have the slightest hesitation. He was the supreme commander sitting in the central region of Huashu Kingdom, the first region. The people of Huashu Kingdom paid the most attention to face, and the more honorable their status was, the more they cared. In any case, there was no way Qin Shigong would give up the basic principle. However, Zhang Yi's eyes were fixed on Li Changgong, and their gazes collided in mid-air as a strong smell of gunpowder filled the air. Li Changgong's gaze was sharp and flighty, with an overbearing attitude. He was not deliberately trying to display such a posture, but was born that way. As the seat of a commander, he had a domineering demeanor that was innate. It was a position inherited through his bloodline. Zhang Yi did not rush to speak. At this moment's scene, his heart was already burning with anger, but he knew very well that the more such a time it was, the more he needed to keep his wits about him. The slightest carelessness would cause him to fall into someone else's trap. Everything can be done once or twice, but not again. Li Changgong was forcing Zhang Yi to take a stand. Today was the third time. If Zhang Yi avoided again, even if this battle was not fought, from now on, he would be a laughingstock in people's mouths, a cowardly person. Li Changgong, on the other hand, was to give up without a fight, stepping on his Zhang Yi's head to gain illustrious fame. After all, at this time, it had only been half a year since Zhang Yi's fame had shaken Star Island and made Chaos' great name known to the East Sea region. However, Li Changgong's fame in the outside world was not great. If Zhang Yi retreated, it was like using all the efforts he had been making to give Li Changgong a dowry. This was the Yang plot. If you fight, you will fall into the trap laid by Li Changgong. If you don't fight, Li Changgong will be able to make a profit. Zhang Yi slowly put down the wine glass in his hand. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Yi looked at Li Changgong with contemptuous eyes and slowly said, If you say you want to fight, I will fight. Li Changgong, you don't think too highly of yourself. What kind of thing are you? Is it because you drank too much of the Northwest wind and sand, and others shouted at you twice as Northwest King, so you're out of your mind? Li Changgong's eyes flashed with a cold light. Oh, are you only showing off your tongue? If you don't dare to fight, you just say you're afraid. I definitely won't make things difficult for you. After all, he raised the wine glass in his hand and shook the 60-years-old Maotai. I, Li Changgong, also don't care to see eye to eye with cowardly rats. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. He tapped the table in front of him with his right hand. Coincidentally, I also hate men with no balls. Since you begged me to fight you, I can fulfill your humble request. But I don't play with children. If I'm going to fight, then I must add some points of color into it. Zhang Yi suddenly snapped, his eyes sharp as if he wanted to eat someone. We were all Epsilon. Since we have to split the winners and losers, then we can't keep our hands off each other. That's why I'm going to bet my life with you. The one who wins will live, the one who loses will die. His eyes stared straight at Li Changgong. This sudden and huge bet startled everyone. Zhang Yi was actually going to play for his life right off the bat. This was tantamount to directly lifting the table. The Southwest region's Pa Jigsaw had already started wiping his sweat with his handkerchief, and Vermilion Bird was also a little pale, looking towards Li Changgong uneasily. Li Changgong's face decidedly changed slightly. Gambling for his life? Although he thought he had Zhang Yi beat, but if it rose to the point of betting his life, it was not the same concept. Cutting was cutting, playing for your life was playing for your life. We were all Epsilon, and if we were playing for our lives, it would be a matter of leaving no room for error and finding ways to kill each other in order to end it. Even if he was to win, he didn't dare to guarantee that he wouldn't be heavily injured by Zhang Yi. A Epsilon-level powerhouse counterattacking without regard for life or death was no joke. Han Shanzhua looked at Zhang Yi and couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Good boy, what a stupid ballsy thing to do. Brother appreciates you. Qin Shigong hurriedly stepped forward to round off the conversation. Chaos, Go Chen, you all calm down. It was the time when the world was in turmoil and Huashu Kingdom needed you pillars to support it. A casualty for any of you was a great loss for Huashu Kingdom. A battle of wills is just a matter of point, you must not fight for your lives. Zhang Yi laughed out loud. As he laughed, he looked at Li Changgong with extremely mocking eyes. What, are you afraid, Grand Commander Li? He slammed the table, weren't you bullish just now? Li Changgong droned in a deep voice, Zhang Yi. Do you have to seek your own death? Your strength is only 13,000 points, who are you to fight me to the death? Zhang Yi leaned on his chair with a big grin, and in front of the crowd, he even directly rested his two legs on the table, and he was oriented just so that he aimed his feet at Li Changgong. At a time like this, having already torn his face apart, he didn't care about image. He was just a small person in Tianhai City. Li Changgong was from a military family, the pride of heaven. For Zhang Yi to care any more about image and wanting face with him would be the most foolish. If I can die with you, I won't lose anything. You are the commander of the Northwest region. Even if I was unable to kill you, believe me, I will make you suffer unforgettable injuries for the rest of your life. Zhang Yi's eyes were filled with viciousness, a look of an outlaw. Even Li Changgong was subdued by Zhang Yi's aura for a time. He did not dare to gamble his life with Zhang Yi. It was because he possessed fame, power, money, beauty, and almost everything, all of which were too much more than this tiny warehouse keeper in Tianhai City. He couldn't afford to lose, and even if he was to win miserably, he still didn't think it was worth it. You are a madman. Li Changgong shouted angrily, pointing at Zhang Yi, his face reddened. This supreme commander of the Northwest region was young after all, and still broke his defense. Qin Shigong laughed in his heart, after all, he was still young and indolent. Just at this time, Zhang Yi suddenly crossed his arms and changed his expression to a lazy one. You're scared just by casually scaring you, with this much guts, what else am I going to tell you? Zhang Yi's sudden change of expression made the people at the scene breathe a sigh of relief, and at the same time, they couldn't help but laugh a little. Zhang Yi's fighting style was very roguish. Among all these people present, he was the only one who could play like this. Because he was the only one without any identity or background, just a small person from the bottom of the hierarchy, he had nothing to worry about and not much to hold on to. He dared to come up and bet on his life, the others, none of them could be that dry. And the kind of smile that the crowd couldn't help but smile, when it fell into the eyes of Li Changgong, who had just grasped the power, it just became a kind of pungent irony. Chapter 1149, I demand that you pay the entrance fee. Li Changgong's right hand was holding the wine glass. He was trying his best to control his force, otherwise this expensive wine glass would be clenched into powder by him in an instant. But he couldn't do it. He was a noble figure, of extraordinary birth, the pride of heaven. He had to maintain his aristocratic elegance. But his mindset had long been messed up by Zhang Yi. Chaos. You want to gamble with my life, was it? Fine, I'll bet with you. Li Changgong's blood was hot, and in order to maintain his dignity, he squeezed these words out of his teeth word by word. Qin Shigong hurriedly acted as a peacemaker once again. Go Chen, chaos, don't be impulsive. You guys have drunk too much. His face became majestic. I'll just say one thing, in my Shing Jing region, you're absolutely not allowed to do this. Not only here, even if you guys leave Shing Jing, I absolutely cannot sit idly by while Huashu Kingdom's internal ministry kills each other. Anyone who dares to lay a hand on a fellow countryman, my Shing Jing region will absolutely not let him go. Qin Shigong, he was a veteran military bigwig of Huashu Kingdom. When he was angry, Li Changgong and Zhang Yi had to shut their mouths and give him some face. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. In that case, I'm afraid I have to withdraw from this operation. Zhang Yi pushed the wine glass in his hand towards the table. I don't want to be teammates with this kind of person. Zhang Yi smirked and glanced at Li Changgong. Qin Shigong had a bit of a headache at this point. The East Sea region was clearly unable to participate in the operation because the objective conditions did not allow it. The Southwest region, on the other hand, had even sent only the number 3 figure, and coupled with the complicated situation in the area, it was even more hopeless. As for Zhang Yi and Li Changgong, after this incident, if they were unable to deal with it properly, it was obvious that neither of them would participate in the operation. This was not a situation they wanted to see. Qin Shigong looked at the two, and after pondering for a moment, he slammed the table. What a damn trouble. You two little guys can really mess things up. Can't you just work together in peace and harmony to protect the country? AI, since it's like this now, we'll just follow the military's method of getting things done. Go Chen, chaos, if you guys have any grudges, then let's fight to settle them. But I'll say it in advance, point to point, absolutely no injuring of lives allowed. What do you guys think? Qin Shigong could sort of see that this battle between Li Changgong and Zhang Yi could not be avoided. If they didn't fight today, they would only fight even harder later. It would be better to set up a stage and let them have a good fight. At least the Shing Jing side could still supervise and control it. Li Changgong said in a deep voice, I have no problem with Marshal Qin opening his mouth. Zhang Yi rubbed his fingers together and gave Li Changgong a meaningful look. Fine, then let's fight. But I won't fight for nothing, this lottery must be there. He crossed his arms on the table and said with a flourish, and for me to fight, I must pay a certain price to do so. I was at least an Epsilon-level powerhouse. If I strike out at anyone who wants to fight me, how disgraced would I be? I demand that the Northwest region pay my appearance fee. In the face of Zhang Yi's catty behavior, everyone was shocked. Even Guan Wangyue, who was watching the scene live from behind the curtain, cocked her head as her gaze fell on Zhang Yi's body, flickering with curiosity. Han Shanzhua couldn't help but slap the table. Ha ha ha. Older brother, you really are too talented, you must have been a tailor in your previous life. Jiang Han also wanted to laugh, but considering the atmosphere of the scene, she was forced to hold it in. But the way she stopped laughing made it hard to watch. Li Changgong's head was filled with black lines. Qin Shigong smiled and said to Li Changgong, Great nephew, look, people have agreed to give you the last fight. Wasn't it time for you to show your appreciation as well? Li Changgong gritted his teeth and stared at Zhang Yi. Fine, I'll give you 100 million worth of supplies, is that enough? Zhang Yi frowned. Who are you looking down on? If the foreigners next door knew, they would think that our Huashu Kingdom's northwest region has no money. I'll say a number, $1 billion. Li Changgong was so angry that his person was about to explode. Crap. You almost got it, why don't you go rob it? Zhang Yi pointed at him. Hey, you said it wrong, it was better than robbing. Li Changgong finally reached supplies worth $300 million before the end of the world before he was driven mad by Zhang Yi. The value of this batch of supplies had long since doubled many times when placed in the present. Zhang Yi was still satisfied. Now you can fight me, right? Li Changgong's voice was like a constipated person holding back his bowel movements and forcing a sentence out of his mouth. Zhang Yi took a sip of water. I know you're in a hurry, but don't be in a hurry yet. Bring the supplies promised to me first, then we'll talk about the fight. He extended his hand towards Li Changgong and demanded the supplies. "Where am I going to get them for you now?" Li Changgong was furious. "I'll give it to you after the fight. Could it be that I, the Supreme Commander of the Northwest region, would still owe you $300 million in supplies?" Zhang Yi shook his head. "Word of mouth is no proof. What if you back out?" He reached out and pointed to the two long swords that Li Changgong never left his side. Those were two very beautifully crafted long swords. It was exquisite as seen from a man's perspective, not the flashy kind, but a violent beauty filled with the aura of killing. Li Changgong took a deep breath and tried to control his urge to immediately pull out his sword and slash someone. His endurance was about to reach its limit. "Do you take me for a fool? These two swords were my weapons. What would I fight you with if I gave them to you?" Li Changgong pressed down on his own long swords and laughed coldly. "After the fight, I'll have myself have the supplies fetched for you as your medical expenses." Qin Shigong said helplessly, all right, we'll advance the $300 million in supplies for the Shing Jing region." "Zhang Yi, why don't you just fight him?" Zhang Yi nodded. "Well, I still have to give face to the Shing Jing region." The crowd present let out a long breath, thinking, these two matter pussies are finally over, and they can finally fight. Zhang Yi slowly stood up, and the crowd all intended to get up and watch a good fight. However, at this time, Zhang Yi slowly sat down again. "There's still something I need to ask." "Say it, dot." Li Changgong's fists were clenched tightly, and everyone at the scene could hear the creaking sound of his finger bones. Zhang Yi glanced at Li Changgong. "Since I've collected your appearance fee, do you think I was fighting for real or not?" Li Changgong, "What the hell, you son of a." If it wasn't for the fact that there was someone pressing on the side, Li Changgong might have actually pulled out his sword and chopped someone on the spot. Zhang Yi saw that the atmosphere was almost brewing and Li Changgong's Dao heart had already been influenced by him. Then he stood up with a smile on his face. All right, I have it in my heart. I'll keep a tight rein when I strike. Who let me take people with a soft hand?" Li Changgong pulled his voice and roared like an angry lion. "Who wants you to let? Don't stop me, I must hack him to death today." Chapter 1150, I Am Heaven's Will. Shing Jing had prepared a specialized battlefield for Zhang Yi and Li Changgong. Since both of them were at the Epsilon level, they could easily destroy a city if they let loose in battle. That was why the point chosen was in the northern Jibei wilderness, 100 kilometers away from Xinjing City. Epsilon-level battles were extremely rare, and of course not everyone was qualified to see them. The only ones who actually went forward were actually the ones who were inside the banquet hall. Zhang Yi did not wish for them to watch the battle. After all, that would expose his abilities to outsiders. But the presence of Qin Shigong and the others was again necessary. After all, Zhang Yi did not dare to guarantee that he could win Li Changgong 100%. Having Qin Shigong and the others present was like adding a life insurance policy. As for the leakage of information about the ability, it was something that could not be avoided. After all, the next probability was that everyone would be traveling to the Qinling mountain to act together, so they could not hide it even if they wanted to. However, Qin Shigong still strictly declared that everything that happened in the venue today would not allow anyone to spread the word. The crowd present all agreed, and then in the distance, looked forward to the start of this great battle. In fact, it was difficult to see the battle between the two with just the naked eye, so it was also necessary to use the Nebula Global Satellite Surveillance System. Including Earth God's Temple's Guanwamua, who also sat with her legs curled up on the soft quilt, staring unseeingly at the two people on the northern plains of Ji. Qin Shigong opened his communication device and said to her, "When necessary, we may not be able to come out in time to stop them, so we'll have to rely on you." Guanlongyua's cool voice came out, "Don't worry, with me here, no one will die." Qin Shigong nodded, his heart slightly at ease. By the time the crowd had left a far enough distance, the battle had already begun without the need for anyone to issue orders. There was no one who could order the two Epsilon powerhouses, and those who had come were merely present as witnesses to this battle. As stated before the winner was decided, as long as life and death were not involved, no one would step in to stop them. Every single person stared at the huge satellite projection light screen in front of them with an extraordinarily focused expression. Watching battles between top-tier powerhouses was, in their opinion, a learning process. Possessing a powerful ability was only the foundation of becoming a strong person. And just as important as that was learning how to use one's abilities flexibly. Zhang Yi maintained a distance of 10 kilometers between him and Li Changgong. He took a deep breath and exhaled it slowly, then with his right hand, he took out the huge sniper rifle, Thunderstrike, from dimensional space. The best weapon, the best condition, and the most perfectly adapted sniping skills. Today's Zhang Yi was at the peak of his battle power ever, and he would unleash everything he had without fear to deal with today's powerful enemy who had a supernatural ability index of 16,000 points and had his personal information. He would definitely lay his hands on the killer. As for whether or not he could save Li Changgong from his hands, it was a matter for Qin Shigong to consider. Anyway, Zhang Yi would not show mercy just because he had scruples. Everything follows the trail, locked onto a piece of space in front of him, and within the next 2 seconds, all movements in front of him would be captured by him. Everything under heaven unfolded thousands of dimensional gates, a third of which were used to form a giant polyhedron to guard Zhang Yi himself. 60 times space accelerate allowed him to chase and escape at any time, as well as pull the trigger as fast as he could. Seeing this scene, Qin Shigong couldn't help but exclaim, "There aren't many exotics in the Epsilon realm that are still able to fight with hot weapons, and I have to say, Chaos was a talent. More importantly, there is the same talent beside him. To be able to create such a set of equipment for him." Han Shanzhua carried his hands behind his back, his eyes somewhat envious. A tailor-made set of armament can raise a mutant's combat power by 2 to 3%. The huge Thunderstrike was lifted up, and 10 kilometers away, Li Changgong immediately had the feeling of being watched with a deadly stare. This feeling was not unfamiliar to him. When he was practicing in the Great Northwest, he had once encountered an ambush by a mutated wolf pack. The feeling of being stared at by the Wolf King in the middle of the night was exactly like this place. Zhang Yi directly pulled the trigger without hesitation. As for Li Changgong, he pressed his long sword with both hands and his figure disappeared like a ghost. He crouched low, like a white wolf king, and rushed towards Zhang Yi in an arc. The speed of the bullet was too fast for Li Changgong. So fast that the naked eye couldn't even capture it, and the crowd who were viewing the battle between the two through the image were dumbfounded. Only Han Shanzhua was able to barely see it, while Jiang Han was already sweating profusely. A fight at the level of Epsilon was already stone cold when it came out. That was no longer in the normal sense, a human dimension. However, Li Changgong's speed was no faster than Zhang Yi's speed. Zhang Yi was fast because he had predicted the trajectory of Li Changgong's future actions in advance. The moment Zhang Yi fired, he captured the movement of Zhang Yi's shot, but he couldn't escape the path that was in the path of his destiny. The bullet instantly arrived in front of Li Changgong's body and zoomed in amongst his pupil. Li Changgong's eyes were as cold as the ice and snow of the North Pole that wouldn't melt for 10,000 years, emitting the ghostly blue light of a coyote. With his eyes fixed on the bullet, his white-gloved right hand pulled out his saber in a flash of lightning. Swish, ... a biting sword light flashed in front of his body, plain and simple, without any fancy. The extremely fast-flying bullet, on the other hand, was split directly in half from the center and then shot to the earth from Li Changgong's side. At the point where the bullet landed, 2 circular craters with a diameter of thousands of meters appeared without a sound. Everything that originally existed was swallowed by the void. The speed of Li Changgong's sword was so fast that he was able to accurately hit the bullet shot by Zhang Yi. It was important to know that with this strike, Zhang Yi did not hold back in the slightest. Zhang Yi didn't hesitate when he was unsuccessful and directly pulled the second trigger. Li Changgong continued to surge towards the front. Boom, 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 boom. One after another bullet shot out from Thunderstrike's muzzle, shooting towards Li Changgong's chest and head. Obviously it was a sniper rifle, but in Zhang Yi's hands, it played out a shooting speed comparable to that of an assault rifle. He didn't need to aim at all, the direction of his mind was the direction the bullet was pointing. But while he was able to capture fate, he was unable to stop Li Changgong from splitting his bullet with a single sword. Zhang Yi was using a gun, and a bullet fired at super high speed contained a huge amount of kinetic energy that could easily destroy a mountain. But Li Changgong rigidly used his power to easily dissolve it. Trait system, space ability user. Zhang Yi's mind recited silently. If he hadn't let Deng Shintong pry to get Li Changgong's information, there was a real possibility that Zhang Yi would be misunderstood and think that Li Changgong was a top-tier enhanced lineage mutant. However, he was not. Northwest King Li Changgong, military code name Great Emperor Go Chen. Trait system ability user, known to possess space ability. Master the supernatural ability, I am Heaven's Will.